first time I realized something was wrong was over a shared Google Doc guest list when my best friend whispered, "No spouses," like it was normal, and I stayed quiet while my stomach dropped. My name is Kira. I'm 26 and I work as a paralegal, which basically means my brain has been trained to spot problems before people admit they exist. Holland and I have been best friends since middle school. We were the girls who traded lip gloss in the bathroom, who promised we'd be each other's maids of honor, who swore we'd never let a man make us smaller. Holland used to say she wanted a love that felt easy, warm, safe, something she didn't have to fight for. Then she met Rhodes. They were together forever. That's what everyone says when they don't know how to describe a relationship that keeps breaking and reattaching, like a cheap necklace chain. 12 years is a long time to love someone who keeps slipping out of your hands. And Rhodes slipped a lot. He left during college because he needed space. He came back when she started looking happy without him. He promised therapy, then called it dramatic. He'd disappear for days, then show up with a half smile and a line that always worked on her. I'm here now. When you love someone like Holland, you learn to pick your words carefully. You learn that saying the truth too bluntly doesn't save them. It just makes you the enemy. A few years back, after the 4th breakup and makeup, I stopped arguing. I told myself I'd be steady. I'd be present. I'd be the place she could land when she finally got tired. Last December, she called me squealing, breathless, like she'd just won something. We're engaged. I remember looking at my phone, waiting for the next sentence. The part where she said he planned something. The part where she said he cried. The part where she said there was a ring. But there was a pause. A small, strange pause. He said we should just do it, she added quickly. Like, it's time. We've been together forever, so we're doing it. I tried to keep my voice up. I tried to give her what she wanted. Oh my God, Holland, that's huge. It is, she said, like she needed to convince herself. It's huge. A week later, she showed me a photo of her hand. No ring. She laughed it off. We're not doing the whole traditional thing. Rhodes says rings are a scam. Rhodes says. Rhodes thinks. Rhodes wants. That became the rhythm of everything. By spring, she had a wedding date picked for July. She'd text me late at night with ideas, and every idea came with a shadow behind it. Rhodes wants it casual. Rhodes thinks big weddings are cringe. Rhodes doesn't want people he doesn't know. Rhodes says guests should pay for themselves because it's not his job to entertain grown adults. At first, I thought she was exaggerating. Holland can do that. She'll make something sound like a bold choice instead of a compromise. I thought maybe she was trying to protect him from judgment, the way she always did. Then she invited me over to plan. Her apartment smelled like candles and takeout. The table was covered in notes and tabs open on her laptop. When I walked in, she threw her arms around me, squeezing too tight, the way people do when they're afraid you'll pull away. "I'm so excited," she said. I said it back, because best friends say it back. She sat me down and opened her laptop like she was revealing a surprise. Okay, so here's the guest list. It was a Google Doc. Names, columns, a weird little rule section at the top, bolded like a contract. No plus ones unless both people are close friends of the couple. I blinked. What does that mean exactly? "It means we're keeping it intimate," she said quickly. "No random partners." I nodded slowly. "Sure, but what about spouses?" She didn't blink. Her smile tightened. "Same rule." I waited for her to laugh, for her to say she was kidding. She didn't. Holland. I said carefully, "I'm married." "I know," she said, still smiling, but her eyes were sharp now. "And I love your husband." "But Rhodes says he barely knows him." My chest went hot. Not anger yet, more like humiliation. Like someone had turned on a bright light in a room I didn't know I was standing in. "He knows him," I said. "We've been at the same dinners, the same birthdays. We've traveled with you two. He doesn't feel close," she insisted. "And it's our day." But she said it like his. I wanted to tell her that this wasn't intimacy. It was control. I wanted to ask why she was bending again, why she was calling it a choice when I could see the strain around her mouth. Instead, I swallowed it. I tried to keep my face kind. "Okay, if that's what you want." Relief flashed across her features so fast it made me sad, like she'd been bracing for a fight, like she expected me to abandon her the moment I didn't agree. Then she clicked to another tab. "And we're not doing a venue," she announced brightly. "We're doing a restaurant reservation." "Cute," I said, because a restaurant wedding can be sweet, cozy, romantic. But she kept going, like she'd rehearsed this part. "Everyone's paying for themselves. Rhodes says people should be happy to celebrate us and not expect it to be a free night out." My stomach sank again. I pictured my husband, who works long shifts and barely gets weekends. I pictured us driving hours, maybe flying, taking time off, paying for a hotel. I pictured showing up and being told to buy my own dinner and maybe bring a cake if I wanted dessert. It wasn't about money. It was the message. "You are invited, but you are not hosted. You are wanted, but only on our terms." I glanced at her. "Are you sure?" Her smile wobbled. "Yeah, I mean, it's not like we're asking for gifts. It's just simple." She said simple like she needed it to be simple, because anything else would mean admitting something bigger. I went home that night and stared at my ceiling for a long time. I didn't tell my husband right away because I felt embarrassed for her. I felt embarrassed for me too, for still being caught off guard by Rhodes's selfishness. Over the next few weeks, the reactions rolled in. Her cousin stopped replying in the group chat. Her aunt left a message on read. One of her oldest friends, the one who'd always defended her, texted me privately and said, "I can't do this. I'm not spending hundreds to be treated like an inconvenience." Holland noticed the shift. She started talking louder about the wedding, like volume could replace enthusiasm. She started posting about it more, like public excitement could force private support. Then today, she called me crying. It wasn't soft crying. It was the kind of crying that steals your breath, that makes you sound like a child for a second, no matter how grown you are. "Why isn't anyone excited?" she asked. "Why do they act like I'm doing something wrong? I'm finally getting married. I'm finally doing it, and they're all so cold." I sat on my couch, phone pressed to my ear, eyes fixed on nothing. I could hear her pacing. I could hear the shake in her voice that meant she was trying not to fall apart. "I'm excited," I said, because I was trying. God, I was trying. "I'm here. I'm happy for you." "You are," she whispered, and her voice turned small. "But you're also so different. Like you know something, like you won't say it. My throat tightened because I did know something. I knew that people weren't excited because they didn't trust Rhodes. They didn't believe he was choosing her with full heart. They believed he was settling into her life because it was easier than building one on his own. I knew people weren't excited because the wedding didn't feel like a celebration. It felt like a transaction with a dress code. I knew people weren't excited because Holland wasn't describing a partnership. She was describing a man's preferences and calling them vows. But if I said that, I might shatter her. Or worse, she might cling to him even harder just to prove us wrong. So I did what I always do when I feel trapped between truth and love. I got quiet. I listened. I let her talk herself into a corner. She sniffed hard. Rhodes says people are being entitled. That if they really loved me, they'd show up. There it was. The line, the test, the guilt. I could practically hear Rhodes's voice underneath hers, guiding her like a hand on the back of her neck. I kept my voice calm. Did he say that to you? Yes, she said, defensive already. And he's right. It's not that hard. I paused. I chose my words like I was walking across glass. Holland, can I ask you one thing? What if it was my wedding? I said gently, and I told you your partner couldn't come, and you had to drive for hours and pay for everything yourself. Would you feel celebrated? Silence. It wasn't an angry silence. It was the kind that makes your skin prickle, because you can sense the truth moving around inside someone, looking for a place to land. That's different, she finally said, but her voice sounded less sure. You know that's different. How is it different? I asked, still quiet, still soft. Another pause. Then she said, because Rhodes doesn't like strangers. My heart broke a little, because my husband wasn't a stranger. He was just someone Rhodes couldn't control. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't tell her what I wanted to tell her, which was that love doesn't come with exclusion lists. Instead, I said, okay, I hear you. She exhaled like she'd won something, like my calm was permission. Then she whispered, I just want people to be happy for me. And that's when I realized the real problem. She didn't want honesty. She wanted a performance, the same performance she'd been doing for years, the one where she pretends Rhodes's crumbs are a feast and everyone else is expected to clap. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time with my phone in my hand, feeling the strange mix of anger and grief. Not rage, not drama, something quieter, something heavier. Then my paralegal brain kicked in, the part of me that doesn't argue, the part of me that collects facts. I opened my messages. I scrolled through weeks of group chat screenshots. I searched key phrases. No spouses. Pay your own, Rhodes says. Rhodes wants. I found the voice notes from Holland where she'd sounded tired and said, he said this is the only way he'll do it. Only way he'll do it. I didn't realize I was crying until my vision blurred. I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and opened a new document. I wasn't going to attack her. I wasn't going to insult him. I wasn't going to beg her to leave him because I'd already learned that lesson the hard way. I was going to do something quieter. I was going to ask one small question to the right person and let the truth do what it always does when it finally gets room to breathe. I typed the question, stared at it, and then I saw a new notification pop up on my phone. A message from Rhodes. It was short, casual, like he was already confident I'd fall in line. It said, hey, just so you know, Holland told me you asked about the +1 rule. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. My hands went cold because now it wasn't just a wedding plan. Now it was a warning, and I stayed quiet, staring at the screen, realizing Rhodes had been listening to our friendship, the way someone listens to a door with their ear pressed against it, waiting for the moment it cracks. I stared at Rhodes's message until the words stopped looking like words and started feeling like a hand closing around my throat. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. My first instinct was to fire back something sharp, something satisfying, something that would make my anger feel useful. Instead, I set my phone down on the coffee table like it was a glass. I didn't trust myself not to throw. I pressed my palms into my knees. I breathed in through my nose, slow and controlled, like I was back in court watching attorneys smile while they tried to bury each other. I told myself one thing. If I reacted loud, he'd win. Rhodes didn't text like a man asking. He texted like a man managing. Like my role in Holland's life was a problem he could solve with a sentence. I picked my phone back up and typed one word. Okay. I didn't add a period. I didn't add an emoji. I didn't add softness. I didn't add heat. Just okay. Then I turned off my screen and let the quiet stretch out. My mind kept flashing scenes from the last year, like my brain was flipping through evidence tabs. Rhodes leaning over Holland's shoulder at dinners, correcting her little jokes. Rhodes deciding where we sat. Rhodes answering questions that were asked directly to her. Rhodes laughing when she said she was stressed, like stress was something she did wrong. I had told myself I was staying neutral for her sake. I had told myself Holland was choosing her own life, but that message made it clear. Rhodes didn't think Holland was choosing anything. He thought he was. I got up and went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, didn't drink it. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight in a way that made me realize I'd been swallowing this for years. Then my phone buzzed again. Holland. One missed call. Then another. I didn't pick up right away. Not to punish her. Not to play games. Just because I needed to make sure my voice wouldn't crack and give away how furious I was. When I finally answered, she said my name like it was a plea. Kira, she breathed. Rhodes told me you're upset. My jaw tightened. Of course he had already reframed it. Not concerned. Not confused. Upset. Emotional. Difficult. I'm not upset, I said, keeping my tone soft. I asked a question. There was a pause, and I could hear her shifting, like she was sitting down on the edge of a bed. He thinks you're judging, she said. I'm not judging, I repeated. I'm trying to understand. Okay, she whispered, and the word sounded thin. Then understand this. This is what we want. I could hear his voice inside that word again, like a ventriloquist pulling the strings. I stayed quiet for a beat, then said, can we meet tomorrow? Just you and me. Coffee. She hesitated. Why? Because you sounded really hurt today, I said. And I don't want to do this over the phone. Another pause. Then she said, okay, but please don't turn it into a Rhodes thing. I looked at my wall, at nothing in particular, and I felt something settle in me. Not resignation, strategy. I won't, I lied, but only halfway, because I wasn't going going to attack him. I was going to show her the shape of what he was doing without naming it like a weapon. After I hung up, I opened my laptop. I pulled up the group chat. I scrolled slowly, taking screenshots the way I would for a case file. I wasn't collecting them to expose anyone publicly. I was collecting them so nobody could twist the narrative later. Rhodes loved twisting narratives. Then I searched my messages with Holland, too. Every time she wrote, Rhodes says, I saved it. Every time she wrote, he'll only do it if I saved it. Every time she apologized for a rule she didn't believe in, I saved it. It made me feel sick seeing it all in one place. And then I found something I hadn't noticed before. A voice note from Holland sent late one night weeks ago. She sounded exhausted, like she'd been crying quietly. He keeps saying if I want everyone there, I should marry someone else, she whispered into my speaker. But then he says he loves me. And I don't know what's wrong with me that I can't just be happy with what I have. I sat back in my chair. My throat burned. He had turned her wedding into a test. If she asked for warmth, she was demanding. If she asked for effort, she was ungrateful. If she asked for a ring, she was materialistic. If she asked for a celebration, she was needy. And she was shrinking herself to fit inside the box he called love. I didn't cry, not yet. I just stared at my screen. And that quiet anger kept building, controlled, and focused. Then I did something that felt small but mattered. I messaged Holland's older sister, Quinn. Quinn and I weren't as close as Holland and I were, but Quinn had always been kind. And she had always looked at Rhodes with the kind of polite distance people use around someone they don't trust. I wrote, hey, can I ask you something privately? Not gossip. Just a real question. Quinn replied almost immediately. Yes, what's going on? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't want to sound dramatic. I didn't want to sound like I was trying to recruit an ally. So I asked one simple thing. Has Rhodes been telling the family that Holland planned the no plus ones rule and the pay your own dinner plan? There was a long pause, long enough that my stomach dropped again. Then Quinn typed back, he told my mom Holland insisted. He said she doesn't want strangers at her wedding. And he said the dinner thing was her idea because she hates traditional stuff. My vision narrowed. A cold clarity snapped into place. He wasn't just controlling the plan. He was controlling the blame. I wrote back, thank you. That's all I needed. Quinn replied, Kira, are you okay? I stared at that message. I thought about how many times I'd smiled through discomfort just to keep Holland close. I'm okay, I wrote. I'm just trying to do this carefully. The next morning, I met Holland at a small coffee shop with scratched wooden tables and a chalkboard menu. The kind of place that makes you feel safe because it's ordinary. The kind of place where people tell the truth by accident. She walked in wearing a pale cardigan, hair pulled back, eyes puffy like she'd slept in fragments. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. I stood and hugged her. She felt tense, like she was already bracing. We sat. She wrapped her hands around her cup, even though it was too hot. Before I could say anything, she whispered, he thinks you hate him. I took a slow breath. I don't hate him. She watched my face like she was searching for a trap. But you don't like him. I didn't deny it. Denying it would insult her intelligence. I care about you, I said, and I care about how you feel. That's what matters. Her shoulders loosened a fraction. I just don't get why everyone is acting like this. It's my wedding. I know, I said gently. Can I ask you a question without you feeling attacked? She nodded, but her eyes were guarded. What do you want your wedding to feel like? I asked. She blinked. Happy. Okay, I said. Describe happy. She frowned, like she'd never been asked to picture it without. Rhodes's commentary layered over it. I want people smiling, she said slowly. I want to feel chosen. I want to feel like he's proud to be with me. My chest tightened. That sounds beautiful, I said, keeping my voice steady. Do you feel like the current plan creates that feeling for you? She hesitated. Then she said too quickly, it's what he's comfortable with. There it was again. The pivot. The way her wants turned into his comfort. I kept my face calm. Holland, when you told me the rules, did you expect people to be excited? Yes, she snapped, then softened immediately. I mean, yes, because it's still a wedding. Okay, I said softly. Can I tell you what it sounds like to people without judging your choices? Her mouth tightened. You think it sounds cheap? I think it sounds like an obligation, I said. Like people are being asked to travel and pay and show up alone. And if they hesitate, they're told they don't love you. Her eyes flashed. I didn't say that. No, I agreed. You didn't. She stared at her coffee and I watched her swallow. Then she said quietly, Rhodes said that. I didn't react. I didn't gasp. I didn't say I told you so. I just nodded once, small and calm, like I was acknowledging a fact in a file. Holland, I said gently, do you know what he's been telling your family? Her head snapped up. What do you mean? I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I didn't shove it at her. I didn't weaponize it. I just placed it on the table between us, screen down, like a neutral object. I asked Quinn a question, I said, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't making assumptions. Her breathing quickened. Why would you ask Quinn? Because you're feeling like everyone is cold, I said. And I wanted to know if people were hearing the same story you think you're telling. She stared at my phone like it might explode. What story? She whispered. I lifted the phone, opened the message thread with Quinn, and turned the screen toward her without a word. No commentary. No accusation, just the words. Holland's eyes moved across the text. I watched her face drain slowly, like someone was lowering the lights inside her. He told them it was my idea, she whispered. I didn't say anything. I let the silence do what it needed to do. Her voice cracked. Why would he say that? I kept my tone soft. Because if people get angry, they'll get angry at you, not him. She covered her mouth with her hand. For a moment, she looked like she might stand up and run. Then she exhaled shakily and whispered, No, he wouldn't do that. I stayed quiet, but I could feel my own heart pounding. She looked up at me, eyes glossy, and said, Kira, please tell me you're wrong. I wanted to. I wanted to hand her comfort. I wanted to soothe her back into denial, because denial would hurt less right now. But love isn't always soothing. Sometimes love is holding a mirror steady. So I said, I hope I'm wrong. Her shoulders trembled. She stared down at the table, breathing fast, and I could see the war inside her. The part of her that wanted to believe in him. The part of her that knew this was a pattern. Then her phone lit up. Rhodes, she froze. The screen kept glowing, buzzing softly on the table table like a warning. She looked at me, eyes wide, and I could see it. Not of losing him. Fear of what he would say if he knew what we were talking about. She swallowed and whispered, "If I don't answer, he'll get mad." And in that moment, the entire coffee shop felt too bright, too loud, like the world was daring me to finally say the thing I'd been swallowing for years. Quick pause outside the story. When I'm editing these late at night, it gets lonely. And your comments remind me I'm not telling this into an empty room. Like, subscribe and tell me your city, state, or country. All right, now let me take you back. Colin picked up her phone with shaking fingers and answered. "Hey," she said, voice tight. I couldn't hear his side, but I could see her face changing with every second. Her eyes flicked to me, then away. Her lips pressed together. Her shoulders lifted like she was bracing for impact. She finally whispered, "I'm with Kira. We're just talking." Her eyes widened suddenly, and she went very still. Then she said too softly, "What do you mean you already told them?" I felt my stomach drop. She listened, face turning pale, and then she whispered, "Rhodes, why would you say it like that?" She pulled the phone away from her ear and looked at the screen, like she couldn't believe what she was hearing was real. Then she held the phone back up and said, voice trembling, "You told them I banned their spouses because I'm insecure?" My blood went cold. Colin's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She just stared straight ahead, silent, while Rhodes spoke into the phone like he was carving a story into her life. Her knuckles went white around the device. Then she lowered the phone slowly and looked at me with a hollow expression I had never seen on her before. "He says if I confront him," she whispered, "he won't marry me." And I realized Rhodes wasn't threatening to leave. He was threatening to punish her for noticing. My throat went dry, but my voice stayed steady. "Then don't confront him," I said softly. Colin stared at me like she didn't understand the words, like her brain only knew two settings with him: obey or explode. "If I don't confront him, nothing changes," she whispered. I nodded, slow. "Right, so we don't confront. We confirm." Her eyes flicked down to her phone. She looked like she was holding something dangerous, like any wrong move would trigger an alarm. "What do you mean?" she asked. I kept my hands flat on the table, calm on purpose. "I mean, you don't argue. You don't accuse. You don't beg. You ask one small question. You let him answer it in writing." Colin's lower lip trembled. "He'll twist it." "Let him," I said quietly. "That's the point." She blinked hard, fighting tears. "Kira, I don't want to lose him." That sentence hit me like a slap. Not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. The grief of it. The way she was still measuring love by loss. I leaned forward just a little. "You're already losing pieces of yourself." She flinched, but she didn't pull away. Colin's phone buzzed again. A new message. She glanced at the screen and I saw her shoulders lift with fear. "What did he say?" I asked. She swallowed. "He says I'm embarrassing him. He says I always let people get in my head." Her voice cracked on the last word, like she didn't want to say it out loud because saying it made it real. I kept my face neutral. "Do you want to go somewhere private?" She nodded too fast. We left the coffee shop without finishing our drinks. Outside, the air was sharp and bright. The kind of day that makes other people look carefree. Holland walked beside me like she was bracing for a storm, even though the sky was clear. We got into my car. The doors shut with a soft thud that felt like closing a lid. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The quiet was heavy. Holland stared straight ahead, breathing shallow, fingers digging into the strap of her purse like it was a lifeline. Then she whispered, "I can't do this." I didn't ask what she meant. I let her decide which truth she could handle. She turned to me, eyes wet. "I can't be the reason everyone hates my wedding." I kept my voice low. "Then don't be." Her brows pinched. "But Rhodes says it's all me. He tells people it's me." I nodded. "And that's why we confirm." She looked down at her phone again, like it was a courtroom exhibit she didn't want to touch. "He's going to be so mad." I took a slow breath. "Holland, look at me." She did, reluctantly. "Your fear is information," I said. "If asking for clarity makes him threaten the wedding, that tells you everything you need to know about what he thinks marriage is." Her eyes squeezed shut. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it fast, ashamed. I hated that she was ashamed of tears. The way he'd trained her to apologize for feelings. I spoke gently. "Text him one question." "That's it." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "What question?" I chose it carefully. Not a trap, not an accusation. Something simple enough that any reasonable partner would answer with reassurance. I said, "Ask him who made the rules." Her eyes widened. "That's going to start a fight." "No," I said. "It only starts a fight if he needs you to stay confused." Her hands shook as she typed. I didn't watch her screen. I didn't hover. I stayed in my seat, facing forward, giving her space to feel like the decision was hers. She hit send. Then she sat frozen, phone in her lap, staring at nothing. The minutes stretched. Each time her phone stayed silent, she looked like she could breathe again. Then it buzzed. She flinched so hard her shoulders jumped. "What did he say?" I asked, still calm. Her eyes moved over the message. I watched her face change. The way you can watch someone step into cold water and realize it's deeper than they expected. She whispered. "He said, you did. I just agreed to keep you happy. Now stop making me the villain." Her lips parted. She looked up at me like she wanted me to tell her it was normal, that it was fine, that this was love. I didn't. She stared at the phone and her voice went thin. "He said I made the rules." I nodded. "He wrote it." She blinked rapidly. Her breathing got faster. Then another message came in. Her eyes flicked down again. This time her face tightened into something harder. Something I had missed. Something that reminded me of the girl who used to say she'd never let a man make her smaller. "What?" I asked quietly. She swallowed. "He said, if you want all those people there so badly, go marry your friends. They're the ones you listen to anyway." Holland stared at the words like they were a bruise forming in real time. And then, very softly, she said, "He doesn't even like me." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't screamed. It was the kind of sentence that comes out when the last layer of denial peels off. My chest tightened. I reached over and covered her hand with mine. "I'm sorry. She pulled her hand back, not because she didn't want comfort, but because she needed control over her own body in that moment. I have to fix this, she whispered. I kept my voice steady. You don't have to fix him. Her eyes flashed. No, I have to fix this. Everyone is pulling away. They think I'm selfish. They think I'm pathetic. I paused, then said the quiet truth. They think you're being controlled, and they don't know how to celebrate someone who is walking into a cage and calling it a home. Her breathing hitched. She shook her head like she was trying to shake off the image. What do I do, Kira? This was the moment I'd been waiting for all these years. Not the moment she finally left him in a blaze of fury. The moment she asked for a map. I spoke slowly. First, you stop arguing with him. You stop trying to convince him to care. You stop negotiating your dignity like it's a price tag. Her lips trembled. Second, I continued, you tell your sister the truth. You don't need a speech. You just show her the messages. Quietly. Let your family see it. Without you performing it. Holland looked terrified. They'll hate him. I held her gaze. They already don't trust him. The difference is they'll stop blaming you. She inhaled sharply. Like the thought of not carrying the blame felt unfamiliar, almost impossible. And third, I said, you make one decision without him. Her brows knit. Like what? I looked down at her phone, then back at her. The invitations. The guest list. The rules. If this is your wedding, you decide what it is. She let out a broken laugh that was half sob. He'll leave. I stayed calm. Then he'll leave. The words hung between us, clean and sharp. Holland looked away, tears spilling now. She put her hands over her face. Her shoulders shook. I didn't rush her. I didn't fill the silence with pep talk. I let her feel the grief of accepting what she'd been trying not to see. After a long minute, she lowered her hands and stared at the steering wheel like she was reading her life there. I've been begging him to choose me, she whispered. For years. I nodded once. I know. She swallowed. And I keep calling it love. My throat tightened. I know. She turned to me with red eyes. What if I'm the problem? I shook my head gently. You're not the problem. You're the person who kept trying. Something shifted in her face. A kind of shame melting into clarity. She looked down at her phone again and wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. Then she did something I didn't expect. She opened her contacts and called Quinn. Not a text, a call. I kept my gaze forward, giving her privacy even inside my car. Hey, Holland said, voice shaky. Can I come over tonight? A pause, then Holland's face crumpled. I need you, she whispered, and I need you to see something. She listened, nodded, swallowed. Okay, I'm leaving soon. When she hung up, she stared at her lap. I'm going to tell them, she said quietly, not with drama. Just the truth. I nodded. That's enough. Holland took a deep breath, then looked at me. Can you come with me? I hesitated because I knew what it meant. I knew what Rhodes would do when she stepped out of line. I knew he'd try to isolate her from anyone who could see through him. I'll be there, I said. That evening, we drove to Quinn's house. Holland's hands shook the whole way. She kept checking her phone. Rhodes called twice. She didn't answer. He texted, where are you? She didn't respond. He texted, you're proving my point. She didn't respond. Watching her not respond felt like watching someone learn to walk again after a long injury. Unsteady, frightened, but moving. Quinn opened the door with worry written all over her face. The moment she saw Holland's eyes, she pulled her into a hug. Holland didn't speak right away. She just handed Quinn her phone. Quinn scrolled. Her expression changed from concern to disbelief to anger so sharp it looked like pain. She looked up at Holland, voice low. He said you made all of this? Holland nodded once, tears slipping down again. He told me it was normal. Quinn's jaw tightened. It's not. Holland let out a sound like relief and grief colliding. I feel stupid. Quinn shook her head. You feel manipulated. And just like that, the blame shifted. Not with shouting. Not with a scene. With one word that finally named the truth. Over the next hour, Holland made quiet moves. She didn't post anything. She didn't rant. She didn't call him names. She canceled the restaurant reservation with a simple message. Quinn sat beside her like a shield. Holland's mom came in and sat on her other side, holding her hand without questions. Then Holland texted Rhodes one sentence. I'm pausing the wedding plans until we talk with a counselor present. No threats, no debate, no emotion he could twist. Rhodes replied instantly. You're humiliating me. If you do this, I'm done. Holland stared at the message for a long time. Her face went still. Then she handed the phone to Quinn like she couldn't hold it anymore. Quinn read it and looked up, eyes hard. He's trying to scare you back into line. Holland's mom whispered, honey, is this what you want your life to feel like? Holland's breath hitched. She looked around the room like she was seeing her support system for the first time, like she'd forgotten it was real. Then she did the bravest quiet thing I've ever seen. She picked up her phone again. Her fingers hovered. She didn't tremble this time. She typed a reply. Okay, just okay, no pleading, no explanation, no chasing. Rhodes didn't respond for a full minute, which felt like an hour. Then the phone buzzed again. A new message, longer this time. Fine, keep your friends. I'll keep my peace. Don't contact me. Holland stared at it, then exhaled a long breath that sounded like someone finally setting down a heavy bag. Quinn squeezed her hand. Her mom kissed her forehead, and Holland started to cry again, but it was different. It was grief, yes, but it was also release. The kind of crying that happens when you stop calling a wound a relationship. In the weeks that followed, Rhodes tried smaller moves. He sent messages like, I miss you, then switched to, you ruined everything. He told mutual friends Holland was unstable. He hinted she cheated. He tried to smear her in soft ways, the way men do when they want to look like the victim without sounding cruel. But Holland had the messages, the written proof, the timeline, and she never fought him publicly. She just did one thing. She forwarded his threats quietly to the people he was trying to charm, not to embarrass him, not to destroy him, just to remove his ability to rewrite her story. The final twist came a month later, when Holland received an email from a jeweler. It was a promotional email, the kind of thing you get when your address is used for an appointment. Holland showed it to me, confused. I never went to a jeweler, she said. Quinn checked the details and found the appointment had been scheduled the weeks Rhodes proposed. The name on the appointment wasn't Holland's. It was Rhodes's coworker. Holland stared at the screen for a long time, then whispered, so he was planning a real proposal, just not for me. Her face didn't crumple this time. It hardened into something steady. She closed her laptop and said, "I'm done." Not dramatic, not loud, final in July instead of a wedding. Holland hosted a small backyard dinner at her mom's house. No rules, no tests, no shame. People brought food. People hugged her. People showed up with partners and laughter and warmth. And for the first time in years, Holland didn't have to convince anyone it was beautiful. It just was. That night, when the sun set and the string lights came on, she leaned against me and whispered, "I thought I needed him to choose me." I swallowed hard. "You chose you." She nodded, eyes shining, and it feels like oxygen. Months later, I saw Rhodes in public once, across a grocery store aisle. He looked right through me like I was nothing. Like my silence had taken something from him he couldn't get back. And maybe it had, because the last thing a man like that can stand is a woman who stops performing for him. The last thing he can control is the truth, once it's already been placed in the right hands. Now, stepping out of the story for a moment, I just want to say this. Some relationships do not end with a big explosion. They end with a quiet sentence. They end when you stop bargaining with someone who only loves you when you are small, when you start paying attention to your own fear, when you realize your anxiety is not romance. It is a warning. And when you finally stop arguing, stop pleading, stop trying to be understood by someone committed to misunderstanding you, something changes. You get your breath back. You get your mind back. You get your dignity back. It does not feel like victory at first. It feels like grief. It feels like withdrawal. But then one day you wake up and the room feels bigger. The silence feels peaceful instead of lonely. And you realize the love you were begging for was never missing in the world. It was just being withheld on purpose. The moment you stop chasing it, you finally remember who you were before you started shrinking.